There are a ton of great retro compilations on the PS2, Gamecube, and Xbox, but more on the PS2. And I thought I'd show you some of the ones I own on the PS2 because that's the system I own them on as opposed to the Xbox or Gamecube. I don't own every compilation possible on the PS2. There's so many of them. It's a great system if you're into retro compilations. That whole generation, the 6th gen, I think has the best compilations over any other gen since. The PS2 was a great system if you were a Neo Geo or SNK fighting fan. Not only did it have great versions of things like King of Fighters 11, SVC Chaos, King of Fighters Maximum Impact, it had quite a few extra compilations, like the Art of Fighting Anthology. Now, the first two games in this are a little basic, but the third one is actually really good and really playable, and the first two are solid. They're not horrible by any means. They definitely show their age. This is a good compilation. I don't have the Samurai Showdown one on either the PS2 or Wii. That's the only one I didn't get, but I did get Fatal Fury Battle Archives, which is another great collection of Fatal Fury. You got Fatal Fury 2, Fatal Fury Special, and Fatal Fury 3, all in one compilation right there for you. So if you're interested in Neo Geo stuff and you don't want to pay Neo Geo prices, there's a lot of really good ones. Also, I didn't get Metal Slug compilation either, but I did get Metal Slug 4 and 5. They released quite a few dual game discs like this, but these two are on the Metal Slug Anthology. So, I mean, you can find this by itself, or you can just get the anthology that has 7 different Metal Slug games on it. I managed to find this for, looks like $7, so when I was out game hunting. Now, I didn't really play World Heroes much back in the day. I remember renting like either the Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis version and didn't think much of it, but there's also World Heroes Anthology. I haven't really played it that much, so in order to get into it, I should definitely play that a little bit more. And like I said, there's also SNK Arcade Classics. It's also on the PS2, it's also on the Wii, and the same with the Samurai Showdown collection. Sega did some remakes of their games, and Japan got so many more of these. Like, they got Knights and all that stuff, but Sega Classics collection, there's some really good remakes in this, and then there's some games that just don't feel quite right. When you take a series from 2D to 3D, there's usually some weird, like, physics changes and stuff. Like, whenever they did Turtles in Time Reshelled on the 360 years ago, I remember downloading the demo and it didn't quite feel right. Same difference here. Like, Golden Axe doesn't feel quite right, but Virtua Racer and some of the other ones in here are actually really fun 3D remakes, so it's a compilation of sorts. Then there's Sonic Mega Collection Plus. Now, this first came out on the Gamecube as Sonic Mega Collection, and then came out on the PS2 and Xbox as Mega Collection Plus. I'm not sure what extra games were added, but, you know, you have some Game Gear games on here, too. It doesn't have Sonic R like the Sonic Gems collection on the Gamecube, which I also have. It has things like Sonic Drift, the little Sonic kart racer that was released on the Game Gear, and just a classic collection of the same Sonic games you've played in thousands of other compilations. And then, of course, there's the Sega Genesis collection, which my very first and very valid complaint about this was that there was no Streets of Rage. They remedied that in Sonic's Ultimate, and then Sega's redone this collection of games and adding extra stuff, you know, over and over again. But if you're on the PS2, it's a solid collection. Again, no Streets of Rage, you know, the typical Sonic games that are also in Mega Collection Plus, and Shinobi 3 and Shadow Dancer. I don't know why Revenge of Shinobi is never on any of these compilations, but I like Revenge of Shinobi, because I've actually beaten it before. Alright, now getting into some of the more vintage style games. Now, I had a hard time with Intellivision Lives in playing some of these games. I know a lot of retro games, you just gotta kind of get in the mindset of when they were made and see what they offer, you know, what they were able to do with the technology at the time. But it's been a while since I've booted this up, so maybe I just don't fully remember, but a lot of these are not as playable as you'd think. Since I never owned an Intellivision and have no nostalgic connection to it, I was a Nintendo brat, you know, in the age of Nintendo, so a lot of the retro stuff, like, I went back to enjoy, and there's a lot of games on the Atari that are actually really still fun, but I found a lot of these are definitely a lot more basic, and it's an acquired taste. But on the other hand, Activision Anthology has a lot of playable and fun games. Pitfall 1 and 2. It's got a bunch of cool unlockables and extras, so Activision, even though these are Atari games, there's a reason that a lot of people liked Activision's games better than Atari's games, because there's some really playable stuff that's actually held up in a playable level here. Better than the Intellivision from what I've played of Intellivision lives. I'm not trying to dog on the Intellivision. I owned neither the Atari nor the Intellivision as a child, and I know that's an old fanboy flame war. So here's a collection that was first gen PS2, Gradius 3 and 4. When it came out, people were just like, okay, so I bought a $300 PS2 with 128 bits, and you want me to play 2 old ports of a Super Nintendo game and then the 4th one? So I don't remember it selling very well, but if you want 2 arcade perfect copies, at least I hope they're arcade perfect. If they're not, then something's terribly wrong. But if you want 2 classic Gradius or Gradius or however, a Leviosa, not Leviosa, however you pronounce it, look for Gradius 3 and 4. It's a solid compilation. The games are super hard, but if you're a shoot 'em up fan, you should look into it. And speaking of if you're a shoot 'em up fan, this one's one of my favorites on the system. Taito Legends 2, my first ever voiced over review was on this game.
Up until this week, I could never figure out the Legend of Cage.
I'm sorry, it's Legend of Kage, not Legend of Cage. Leviosa, not Leviosa. That's all I hear when people like try and fix. The pronunciation is wrong. That's the voice that I hear in my mind when I read their words. Alright, and now it's on to the Capcom ones. And Capcom had some really good compilations on the system too. Some of their best compilation work, I think, ever. Starting out with Capcom Classics Collection. This one has a sequel to it, Capcom Classics Collection 2, which I have right here. If I had a choice between them, the second one has like 3 big killer games: Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Knights of the Round, and Strider. That's the 3 biggest games on the second one. So it's a solid collection, but the original has the Ghosts and Goblins, Ghouls and Ghosts, and like the 85 different versions of Street Fighter 2 you could ever want to play. So if you have a choice between the first one or the second one, go with the original. It's a much better collection of games, in my opinion. There are some good ones to play on the sequel, but I think this is Capcom's best compilation I've played. I haven't bought a new system since the 7th gen, so if there's something better that has come out since, which I doubt, let me know in the comments. Mega Man Anniversary Collection. This has 10 Mega Man games on one disc. This is for the 15th anniversary of Mega Man. It has a lot of content. So if you're a huge Mega Man fan of just the original Mega Man series, you get so many Mega Man games in this, it's not even funny. So if you're a Mega Man fanatic, one, you probably already own this. If not, then pick it up. And then that also, I have a factory sealed still Mega Man X collection. What a games! No, I'm just kidding. I'm actually gonna open this. I got this for Christmas years ago. I just never opened it, never got around to opening it or playing it. Mega Man X collection, also a fantastic collection of Mega Man games. 7 Mega Man games in this Mega Man X collection. Probably cheaper to pick up than any of the individual Super Nintendo cartridges of Mega Man anything. Compilation collection, it should be Xbox, Gamecube, PS2. Find it on whatever system. Now I do have Street Fighter Anthology, which has Street Fighter 2, whatever, the collection or the anthology, I forget. But I couldn't find it for this video, so that means it's packed away in a tub. But I do have Street Fighter Alpha Anthology, which is another great collection of the Street Fighter Alpha series. Alpha, Alpha 2, Alpha 2 Gold, Alpha 3, and then Pocket Fighter, or Gem Fighter as it's called. Pocket Fighter on the PS1 and Saturn. So I have the other one with Street Fighter 2, I just can't find it. So another great collection here of Street Fighter games and Capcom games. I know Capcom has released like a more in-depth Street Fighter anthology or compilation recently, so that might be cheaper and easier to find. But if you're out in the PS2 market, if you find some of these games for cheap out there, thrift store finds, whatever, great pickups. You get a ton of great games from when Capcom was at their best. And now these last 3 that I'm going to show, the first one is probably my favorite because I didn't realize how good Midway was until I finally played this compilation. This one gave me my love for Robotron. It has so many great games. Midway Arcade Treasures, the original. I think this is my favorite retro compilation on the PS2. It's hard. Taito Legends 2 is also fantastic, and Capcom Classics Collections 1. But something about Midway Arcade Treasures just hit right. It's got so many great... It's got Super Smash TV, or sorry, Smash TV, Gauntlet, Defender, and games I didn't even know I needed in my life until I finally played them here, like Root Beer Tapper. And then this is where my love of Robotron started, right here by playing it here in this compilation. I don't think I'd played it, or I'd played it somewhere maybe, but I hadn't really just sat down and played Robotron. I am terrible, I am trash at Robotron, don't get me wrong, but I love it. This is one of the best compilations. I've sung praises to all three Midway Arcade Treasures for years, to deaf ears, but probably my favorite right here, Midway Arcade Treasures. I love this compilation right here. Defender, Joust, you know, Midway's 80s classics right here. And then the second one I didn't get new. In fact, I just got it used in an empty black case, as you can see. This one has the Mortal Kombat 2, Mortal Kombat 3, Pit Fighter, Primal Rage. It doesn't have the original Mortal Kombat because that was in a special edition of, I forget which PS2 Mortal Kombat. I mean, after Deadly Alliance, I can't remember what the other two are and in what order. But there was a special edition of, what was it? Deception, and I forget what, I can't even remember the name of the other Mortal Kombat game on the PS2. I get that way with Ratchet and Clank too. I have a hard time remembering which one is which after the original. This one was probably my least favorite out of the three. You know, there's no NBA Jam because they couldn't get the NBA license, but you got Arch Rivals, and that one was pretty fun. And there's Gauntlet 2, you got Mortal Kombat 2, Mortal Kombat 3, Pit Fighter, Rampage World Tour is on this, so that's actually, I think, my favorite game on the compilation there, Rampage World Tour, at least that I've played so far. As I play more, I might find something better, but, and then here's the third one. This one is also an amazing collection of Midway games. This, Midway Arcade Treasures 3. You got Hydro Thunder, Rush 2049, Rush the Rock, Off-Road Thunder. So many. This is their racing game compilation. And some of the best, if not the best, arcade racers of all time are on this. This one is an awesome compilation too. I highly recommend this one. So the Midway Arcade Treasures, the first one's probably my favorite, but this third one is pretty close. This is one of the best compilations on the system if you are into arcade racing games. In fact, it's the best if you are into arcade racing games, the best retro gaming compilation. Again, Hydro Thunder, Rush 2049, Rush the Rock. Awesome, awesome collection of games. And again, this is where I really started to appreciate what Midway had done in gaming over the years. I saw, but I didn't realize how many great, fantastic Midway games there were and what a great influence they had on gaming until I started playing these. And then you look at their games that they released in this generation, and they were one of the most underrated developers, if not the most underrated developer. And there you have it. That's just a quick look at the retro gaming compilations I own on the PS2. There are more, and I even own a couple more I couldn't find for this video just to show you. They're also on multi-platforms. There's some that went over to the Wii, like Samurai Showdown, Anthology, and some of the other ones. So whether it be Xbox, Gamecube, Wii, or PS2, just keep an eye out for these compilations. If you're ever out and, you know, at a thrift store or at a game store, there's so many great classic compilations in the 6th generation. Probably, no, I won't even say probably. This was the best generation ever for classic compilations, because after this, the digital age, what they would do is they'd take every single game on like Capcom Classics Collection and sell it to you for $4 a piece instead of just sell you a $20 compilation. If you like value in retro gaming and you want to play a bunch of these old arcade games in arcade perfect form, keep an eye out for these. They're super collectible and there's so many great games on them.